Mr. Speaker, the Senate's on the regular calendar. Item number 1, Senate Joint Resolution 123 by Senator Beavers. Mr. Speaker, the resolution was read for the third time on February 3rd, 2014.
Senator Beavers, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We were in discussion on this, and there was just one more thing that I wanted to point out. As you recall, this is for an elected Attorney General. I have believed for a long time that our Attorney General is twice removed from the people since the Tennessee plan passed. It's been said on this floor that if it ain't broke, let's don't fix it. Well, folks, it's been broken. The 1870 Constitution provided for the election of the Supreme Court justices. In 1970, in the 70s, when the Tennessee plan was adopted by this General Assembly, the system became broke because we then had an appointed Supreme Court who then appointed our Attorney General. That makes him twice removed from the people. I trust the people of this state. I know there's been a lot of conversation about they'd have to raise money. There have been cases in other states where we'd had some dishonest attorney generals. That can happen with any of us, folks, with anybody that is elected to office or appointed to office. And so I would ask for your vote on SJR123 to elect the Attorney General to just give us a chance to keep this alive until next year. You'll have two then to consider. Senator Green's we voted for last year, which would provide for an appointment by this body in the House, similar to the constitutional officers. This will just keep it alive and give us a choice next year.
Senator Green?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, if the sponsor will yield.
She yields.
I wanted to clarify some comments made last time we debated this. I too trust the people of Tennessee. I do. But the problem with the elected Attorney General, as we have seen in every other state that does it this way, is that they do move on to governor or move on to run for governor. And the problem with that is you have a person who's in their middle of their appointed term, and then they step down and someone else comes in to fill the position for the remaining part of that term. And that's an injustice to the people of Tennessee. Because once they are taking money, it is a conflict of interest. So I think that's an injustice. And a 4-year term actually removes the people, or the AG, from the people more so than the amendment we passed last year, or the resolution last year. Last year we said that this body would elect. Well, this body turns over every 2 years. We would do it like our constitutional officers, which is every 2 years. I think that's even closer to the people. So just thank you for the opportunity to share that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Kelsey?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've heard this argument about running for office before, and so I went ahead and looked it up. And it turns out that of the 43 states that have an elected Attorney General, only 6 of them have a governor who served as the Attorney General. So while it may be an office that you can use to run for office, it's not highly successful in being an office that allows you to win the office of governor. And also just want to reiterate the point that was made by the sponsor, that we have a constitutional amendment that is up for a vote in November of this year. And if that is passed, as I hope it is passed, then it will once and for all ensconce in the Constitution that we have a founding fathers method for selecting our judges. And at that point, we will need to do something to change the method by which we use to select our Attorney General. So that if it's not this resolution, I hope it's another resolution that we can put forward, or perhaps even another a bill that I have coming later this year that would say that, hey, the Attorney General needs to be responsive to the people. We should not, in Tennessee, be subject to the whims of one person who is now twice removed from the people when we're making decisions about whether to challenge acts like Obamacare. Thank you.
Further discussion? Senator Henry?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This question, Mr. Speaker, is not a new one. I remember a few years ago in the 70s, 80s, Ambassador Ash, who then sat in our body, proposed this method, and his argument primarily was that, I mean, not flat out, but he said, well, there's no way for Republicans to gain office. We need another office for Republicans to gain office. I said, well, just slow down, Victor, and you'll gain office because you gain the majority of votes, and you get your Supreme Court. Well, he did. But then since that time, I went up to Virginia for the Council of State Governments on a federalism project up there. Because the Attorney General up there was elected, had been recommended to me as a very strong Federalist. I ought to enlist him, so I did. Well, I hadn't left Virginia long before he was out running for governor. Then, most recently, I don't know whether you all noticed or not, again in Virginia, they elected Attorney General up there, and they elected one, and he was charged with the defense of a lawsuit against the state, which had to do with either abortion or marriage. The state had amended the Constitution to say you could not do things like that. Well, he not only went to court, he switched sides after he got in court. He was on the state of Virginia payroll. He switched sides and made a statement in the newspaper, I want Virginia to be on the forward side for one time. That was elected Attorney General. Folks, I wish we would just begin this discussion, and I wish we were where we could hear what Senator Oldby had to say yesterday. The gentleman from Blunt encapsulates the arguments beautifully. In fact, I'll ask if the gentleman from Blunt will yield.
He yields.
Senator Blunt, Senator Oldby, would you recapitulate what you told the body yesterday, please?
You're recognized to capitulate.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to the gentleman from Davidson County, thank you very much for those kind words. And if people are watching this, they would see my face has turned pink at your comments, and I'm very grateful, and they are heartfelt. Basically, the words were, we have had this system in place since 1870. And some folks may not like the way we choose the Attorney General, but it is the way the framers of this Constitution wrote it. And it has, in fact, worked. No one on this floor has ever pointed out to a single act of misfeasance, nonfeasance, or malfeasance by the Attorney General. We should only change a system if it isn't working. And simply because one of us or several of us may disagree with a decision of the Attorney General doesn't mean the system isn't working. It means we disagree, just like we disagree with each other from time to time, and that doesn't mean this system doesn't work. I've heard it said here on the floor, and this is not recapitulation, Senator Henry, but I've heard it said that, and I must take issue, I've heard it said that the members of the Supreme Court are not elected. That's simply not true. The members of the Supreme Court, or our appellate courts, are appointed by the governor and then stand for a retention election. Now, you may not like that, but a retention election is an election. Members in the other chamber and this chamber are often appointed when someone leaves office during their term, they're appointed by the county commission of their home county. And then they stand for election. But a retention election is an election, just like a referendum, which is a yes or no vote, is an election. And again, you may not like that, but the simple fact of the matter is it is an election. And so they do stand for election. But the issue before us today is not the Supreme Court or how the Supreme Court is, the members of the Supreme Court come to office. The issue is how the Attorney General comes into office and has come into office since 1870. And no one has ever pointed out that it hasn't worked, that we haven't benefited from the independency of that office and the rendering of opinions that we can rely upon. And so that's why I believe it is true that if it ain't broke, you don't fix it. This is not a problem. It's not broke, and it doesn't need to be fixed. Again, thank you to the gentleman from Davidson County. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
I have Senator Campfield and Senator Nice. Senator Campfield.
Thank you. I must defer from my colleague that there is no problem. Now, we can all say selection means election. I think anybody with common sense who's probably watching on TV, if we said we all want to be appointed and then only stand for a yes-no retention vote and that's our election, I think they'd laugh us out of office, or they should. Selection isn't an election, but that's what the Attorney General has said it is. But we don't have any problem. Some people say they don't have a problem with that. When they all talk about corruption. Okay, well, they could be corrupted. Our Attorney General could be corrupted by running for office. I guess that's true, just like any of us probably could be corrupted. But they seem to forget that one of the biggest decisions he ever made was for the people who are his bosses. And what that was to say that a retention election is an election. Well, who is he catering to other than the people who voted to put him in office in the first place? To say that's not corruption, but possibly running for office is? They say there's no problem. We don't have anything. We're not fixing anything. If it's not broke, why fix it? Well, wait a second. We've got constitutional amendments coming up the next couple of years that are fixing problems that were started with our Attorney General opinions. Our Attorney General said, well, yeah, income tax is constitutional. We can have that. Well, wait a second. We all voted on trying to stop an income tax because our Attorney General said, well, yeah, even though our Constitution says you can't have an income tax, you can have an income tax. Our Attorney General won't defend our legislation that we bring up. We've had things, I know when we did redistricting, he wouldn't defend our plans for redistricting unless it was his plan, unless he agreed to it. So say he's defending us, he's supporting us, he's doing what the will of the people, well, he's not. To say he's working for the people of Tennessee, when we have asked him, I don't know how many times, that we've said, hey, let's join the fight against Obamacare. He wouldn't. He refused. You know, everybody keeps saying, well, we've got problems and the election is a terrible idea. Well, all the problems with democracy can be fixed with more democracy, not less. It's very simple to me. If he's bad, he's not doing a good job, as the case where all these ones that have run for Attorney General have run for governor, fine. They don't get elected. They don't win. Let them stand on their record of the things they've supported and the things they've spoken on, just like we all have to do. In the end, at some point, we have to trust somebody. We're going to trust legislators, or we can trust the people. Now, we can all sit up here on high horses and say, we're smarter, we know better, or we can trust the people. The more I see of government, the more I trust the people. Thank you.
Senator Isley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On a lighter note, it does my heart good to see all these people bragging on an old-time election, the virtues and the values of an old-time election. And I hope you will remember that when I bring my bill to allow me to elect a few of my directors of schools in these rural counties.
Mr. Speaker, I think we've said all that needs to be said on this. This is not a choice between Senator Green's legislation. 2/3 of you last year, including myself, agreed that we need another process to either appoint or elect an Attorney General. We don't know what's going to happen with the constitutional amendment on the selection of judges next year. We don't know what's going to happen with Senator Green's resolution over in the House. Next year, though, if we vote for this today, we'll have a choice next year of which way we want to go with either the election or the selection of the Attorney General. So I ask for your vote today on SJR123.
Parliamentary situation, question has been put. Senator Beavers has closed, so we're on the board. Those who favor SJR123 will vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed will vote no. Mr. Clerk, take the vote.
Ayes 15, nays 14.
Senate Joint Resolution 123 having failed to receive the Constitution majority, we re-refer to the Committee on Calendar. Next order, Mr. Clerk.